Today we're joined by Rich Austin, rock star Sandler Trainer from Chicagoland. You know, Rich, I think in sales, there's certainly advantages to being really good looking and young. However, sometimes I feel like it can really take away from the substance and the credibility and the value. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Thank you for having me and for those exceedingly kind words. It's an interesting conversation that I've had with a lot of people in terms of, let's say, genetic improbabilities, but thank you for the compliment. I appreciate that.
I was talking about myself. Oh, you thought I was talking about... So, Rich, there's definitely a lot of uncertainty right now out in the market and out in the world in general. Maybe people feeling fear and anxiety and apprehension. From your perspective, how does fear factor in to the world we live in right now?
Well, you're right. We're seeing a lot of fear out there in a lot of ways, and it's justified for many different reasons. The ultimate question that we have to ask ourselves is, how long are we going to allow fear to dictate our behaviors or the actions that we take? Because ultimately, we're the ones holding ourselves hostage, and it's a party of one. You know, it's really not the external world that we're fearing, but more our belief systems. And by the way, there are some positive benefits to fear. Fear is an emotion that we all feel that we can't necessarily get rid of. I think we can learn how to manage it. But it's important in some instances. If you and I are going for a walk in the mountains of Montana, hiking, and we turn the corner and we hear a rustle in the bushes and a growl, it's probably not going to suit our interest if we just agree, oh, it's probably nothing. It's very likely a bear or some type of a predator. So fear kicks in and it's fight or flight time. So we understand that, and that part of fear is good. Where fear can become detrimental to especially salespeople and leaders is when we start to listen to the monsters that are inside our head rather than the ones that are actually living under our bed. And we stop doing the things consistently that we were doing in terms of behavior to put us in position to win. And in sales, we know this, we're going to fail more often than we win. And perhaps we're seeing an uptick in that in some instances. But when this all clears, we have to be able to position ourselves to be the first or second call on people's list when they reinstitute the initiatives that they want to press the green button on here in the next couple of months when this clears.
Yeah, so that's really important. It's difficult though, right? I mean, right now it's kind of hard not to have that fight or flight instinct. Is there like a behavior component, something that might be helpful that you embody or suggest to your clients to manage the war between their ears right now?
Yeah, I think the most important thing from a behavioral standpoint is to keep consistency with some of the things that you're doing on a regular basis. Let's take a look at journaling and checking in with your identity and your role. And those of you that are in Sandler know precisely what I'm talking about, but that's something that you can control. Continuing to make dials, continuing to hop onto LinkedIn and add value to conversations, doing whatever you can do to give back to your constituents, to your clients, to your prospects, so that you can add value to their world when they need it. Jody Williamson talked at Sandler Summit about unethical selling. And one of the first principles of unethical selling is it's unethical to sell somebody something that they don't need. But the second tenet is it's unethical to not sell somebody something they do need. And if there are people out there that are struggling right now that need your help in terms of product or service, and we're not reaching out to them because we're allowing fear to dictate our behavior or our actions, we're not doing them any favors and we're not doing us any favors. So we have to be strong enough and courageous enough to set aside some of those talk tracks inside of our head that say you shouldn't or you couldn't or it doesn't make sense to, and look at the flip side of that in terms of, well, what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, so from a technique perspective, what are the techniques, Rich, that you're thinking are applicable right now and may help kind of manage it, continue to provide value, sell ethically in this marketplace?
So one of the things that is important for us when we're selling in any capacity is to never make assumptions. I don't ever want to assume that somebody that I'm calling who doesn't know me, who's a complete stranger, and I'm a complete stranger to them, that we would have any reason to do business. And I think in this environment, it's even more sensitive. So one of the techniques that I'm using, it's very simple. First and foremost, if I get a hold of a decision maker, I might say this, people I'm talking to these days are in one of three buckets. They're stuck and they can't do anything. They're in neutral, or they're trying to figure it out. They're in figure it out mode and they're not exactly sure what that looks like, or they've committed to action. So I'm curious as to which three buckets you're in, because what I'm about to take 30 seconds to tell you in terms of the reason I called may or may not make sense for us to even get that far based upon your response first and foremost. And so that has opened up, I'm not saying that I'm booking meetings with people on every dial that I make, but what I am saying is that's shifting, the empathy approach is shifting from, I don't have time for this, to this is a conversation that might have some impact in my world. And so I'm finding that technique is really diffusing the situation, taking some of the pressure off of somebody who's attempting to sell, somebody who may or may not be in a position to buy, so that we can connect on the human to human level and figure out fairly quickly, do I have the skill set that I can bring to them right now in their current environment to help them be more competitive, to help them be more efficient. And by the way, what I cannot control, I can't control their mindset. I can't control whether or not they're open to have a conversation with me. All I can control, all we can control collectively, is how many opportunities we get, how many dials we make, let's say, and how we position ourselves. If we focus on what we can control and take the outcomes out of play, we're going to have higher level conversations.
Rich, I love that. And, I wonder, on a human level, you probably get up in the morning and have to almost work on your own mindset. Are there certain kind of quotes or practices or maybe beliefs that you tell yourself that kind of helps you with your mindset each and every day?
One comes to mind immediately, and I've used this quote in a couple of webinars that I've done recently. The woman's name, by the way, it's a name of the year candidate, Nema. So keep that in mind as we are trying to figure out who wins name of the year. Her name is Wilma Mankiller. And Wilma Mankiller was the first female elected chief of the Sioux Native American tribe. And this is back in the 60s, 70s. But her quote was consistent with this: when there's a storm on the horizon in the plains, and cows see the storm coming, the storm is foreboding, it's scary, there's lightning, there's thunder, there's noise, there's driving rain, there's all that stuff. They turn and they run away from the storm. And unconsciously, they're actually prolonging their experience in it because they're running right along with it. Versus if you take a look at the American bison or buffalo. When buffalo sees the storm coming, they turn and they face it and they run into it. And they know it's going to be a bear. They know it's going to be tough. But ultimately, they're able to get out of the storm a little bit quicker. And so, the challenge is this: every morning when I wake up, am I running away from something? Am I running away from problems, or am I running towards them so that I'm not going to feel good in the moment when I'm facing those issues, or I'm picking up the phone, which is kind of a scary thing to do even for a Sandler trainer. But ultimately, once that behavior is over with, I'm going to feel good about it then, which is going to make, let's say, my weekend or my evening much more enjoyable, because I know that I've run towards the storm or done the things that I need to do to put me in position to succeed.
Hey, Rich, before we sign off here, anything else you want to add?
Yeah, Nema, I want to thank you for hosting this series, for starting it, for conceiving it, for executing it, for bringing in people from around the world to give their thoughts, to hopefully bring some impact. And most certainly what everybody needs right now is to laugh. And Lord knows that you're not going to make anybody laugh, but at least your guests will. Yeah, I completely missed that one. I'm sorry, a little bit uncomfortable now, but Nema, chances are they're staring at your beard.
Well, I mean, it's like a magnet. It's a goddess, or God. That's probably not good. God magnet? I don't know.
It's a magnet for gods. Gods live in your beard and they command universes, and we might not be able to see them, but they exist.
You heard it here first. I think we're good.